Okay, I'm going to start with the notes here. And there's actually not too many, so you don't have to worry about exercising your fingers as much. Eating with sinners. Jesus ate with known sinners and preached to them. The Jews thought of these people as unclean and disapproved of spending time with them. Of course, Jesus knew that those were exactly the people that he needed to spend time with. He doesn't need to spend time with the saints because they're already with God. He needs to spend time with the sinners. He also recognized that the Jews that didn't like these people were sinners themselves. They just wouldn't admit it. And if you have time, read the parable of the Good Samaritan, especially if you don't remember it. Pause here. The 12 apostles. Jesus chose 12 of his disciples to be apostles who would have important roles in his salvific mission. He chose disciples that had been with him the whole time. The number 12 is significant because it symbolizes the 12 tribes and the new Israel. Pause here. Okay, here we have the 12 apostles. Go ahead and write those down. There are some different names for a couple of them. So if you see a list that's a little different, that's why they have their Jewish name and their Greek name. They would have used their Greek name for the market that was common at that time. So pause here if you need to. The Last Supper. What we know now as the Last Supper was Jesus and his apostles celebrating the annual feast of Passover. Now, do you remember what the Passover was celebrating? I'll give you a second to think about that. What was the Passover celebrating? Why was there this annual feast? It was celebrating the escape from Egypt. In particular, the final plague on Egypt, the killing of the firstborn males. And this was called Passover because Moses received instructions from God on what the Israelites should do in order to avoid the death of their firstborn males. And the angel of death passed over their homes so that no one died. And so they celebrate this annually with a recreation of the feast that they had with unleavened bread and lamb and so forth. Pause here if you need to. Now, Jesus changed the format of the celebration. It wasn't a huge change, but it was significant, and it was something that those celebrating with him would have noticed. He did this because instead of a celebration of the old covenant, of the Passover of the time of Moses, he was providing a format for the new covenant. Pause here if you need to. At the Last Supper, Jesus instituted the sacrament of the Eucharist. He gave a model for the Mass. That Last Supper is included in our Mass. It is basically the liturgy of the Eucharist is essentially the same thing that Jesus did at the Last Supper. You pause here if you need to. The cup of consummation is something that Jesus had left out. One of the slight changes that he made. The agony in the garden. Jesus prayed at Mount Olive. He knew what was coming. He knew he was going to die, and that his apostles would abandon him, which was certainly going to hurt him, even though he knew it would happen, and even though he knew the reasons for his sacrifice, it certainly would have hurt his feelings, I think, to have his friends leave him. The cup of consummation that was not completed at the feast of Passover would be filled with his blood. Pause here if you need to. Judas betrayed Jesus, and the soldiers arrested Jesus, and he was brought before the Sanhedrin, the ruling council of the Jews. And it didn't go well there. Okay, pause here if you need to. This is the last slide. And make sure you do tomorrow's homework too. See you at the Zoom.